Okay, picture this. You're lying in bed at 11 p.m., scrolling through your banking app for the fifth time today. Not because anything changed, not because you're expecting a deposit. You're just checking again. Your balance says $2,347, and somehow that number controls your entire mood for the next 12 hours. If your car makes a weird noise, your stomach drops before you even pop the hood, because you already know a $400 repair means you're eating rice and eggs for 2 weeks. If a friend suggests a weekend trip, you say maybe while doing frantic mental math about whether you can put it on the credit card and pay it off before the interest kicks in. You're not broke. You have a job, maybe even a good one, but every single dollar that comes in already has 6 jobs waiting for it before it even lands in your account. Here's the thing. I want you to remember that feeling, that specific, exhausting, soul-draining feeling of financial whiplash, because I'm about to tell you something that's going to sound almost unbelievable if you're living in that world right now. That feeling goes away, not slowly, not gradually. It goes away almost like a switch flips, and it flips at a very specific, very predictable number, $50,000. Stick with me, because by the end of this video, you're going to understand exactly why that number matters so much more than the ones before it, and exactly what you need to do to get there faster than you think. My name is Parker, and I spend way too much time thinking about the psychology of wealth building and why some people seem to hit a point where money just starts working for them, while other people stay stuck on the paycheck-to-paycheck treadmill for decades. If you're someone who feels like you're doing everything right, budgeting, working hard, maybe even investing a little, but you still feel like you're one car repair away from disaster, make sure to hit the subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up if this helps you out. It genuinely helps me keep making these videos, and more importantly, it means you'll catch the follow-up video where I break down the exact system to get to that number faster. Now, before I get into the $50,000 thing, I need to challenge something that almost everybody believes about building wealth. Most people think wealth building is linear, like saving your first $10,000 felt like climbing Everest, then saving your first $100,000 should feel 10 times harder, right? 10 times the sacrifice, 10 times the grind. Here's what most people don't realize. It's actually the opposite. The first $50,000, by a significant margin, is the hardest money you will ever accumulate in your entire life. Harder than the second 50, harder in a lot of ways than the next 450,000 after that. I know that sounds insane, so let's look at why. A widely cited stat from a 2023 Federal Reserve survey found that nearly 40% of Americans couldn't cover an unexpected $400 expense without borrowing money or selling something. Now sit with that for a second. Not $40,000, $400. That's the world most people are operating in. And in that world, every dollar is fighting against you before you even earn it. Here's the math nobody explains properly. Let's say you're trying to save your very first $1,000. If you're making, say, $50,000 a year, that $1,000 is going to feel like blood, sweat, and tears. You're going to have to say no to dinners, cut streaming subscriptions, maybe pick up a side gig. That $1,000 might take you 3 or 4 months of genuine sacrifice. But here's the cruel part. That $1,000 sitting in a savings account earns you basically nothing. At a 4% interest rate, which is actually generous, that's $40 a year. $40. You worked 4 months for the principal, and it's paying you back at a rate of about $3 a month. Now compare that to someone who already has $50,000 invested. That same 4%, or let's be real and use a long-term stock market average of around 7 to 8% after inflation, that's $3,000 to $4,000 a year, showing up whether they work, sleep, or take a vacation. Money doing in a year what took you multiple months of grinding to do at the beginning. This is where it gets really interesting. The reason the first $50,000 feels so brutal isn't because you're bad with money. It's because at low dollar amounts, your effort is doing almost all of the work, and your money is doing almost none of it. You are the entire engine. There's no assistance, no momentum, no compounding tailwind pushing you forward. It's just you pedaling uphill in the wind, alone. Let's talk about compound interest for a second, because I promise I'm not going to bore you with a textbook definition. Here's an analogy that actually makes this click. Compound growth is like pushing a boulder up a hill versus rolling it down one. From $0 to $50,000, you are pushing that boulder up the hill. Every single dollar requires your muscle, your labor, your sacrifice. There is no help. But once that boulder crests the hill, once you cross that $50,000 threshold, something shifts. The boulder starts rolling on its own. You still need to guide it, sure, you still need to keep contributing, but gravity, meaning compound growth, is now doing real, meaningful work alongside you. Let's put real numbers to this, because vague inspiration doesn't pay bills. Math does. Say you're contributing $500 a month into an investment account, earning an average 8% annual return, which is roughly in line with long-term S&P 500 historical averages before inflation adjustment. Going from $0 to $50,000 takes you about 6.5 years of consistent contributions. During that entire time, your own contributions make up around 92% of that balance. Your money is basically along for the ride, contributing almost nothing to the growth. You are doing the heavy lifting. But watch what happens next. Going from $50,000 to $100,000 at that same $500 a month only takes about 5.5 years, even though it's the same 50 grand. And by the time you're going from $200,000 to $250,000, it takes under 3 years. The same $50,000 jump that took 6.5 brutal years at the start now takes less than half that time, with less of your own contribution doing the work. Here's what most people don't realize about this. It's not that you got better at saving. It's not that you suddenly started earning way more. It's that your money started earning money on the money that was already earning money. That's the entire secret. That's it. That's the whole trick that nobody explains in school. Now, you might be thinking, okay, Parker, that's just compound interest. I've heard of that before. Sure, but here's the part people skip over. Compound interest is basically invisible and boring for the first several years. It looks like nothing is happening. This is exactly why most people quit before they ever see the payoff. They save for 18 months, look at their accounts, see barely any growth beyond what they put in, and think, this isn't working, and they stop. Okay, so we've covered the math, but honestly, the math isn't even the most important part of this video. The psychology is. Here's the thing about that $50,000 number. It's not just a financial threshold, it's a psychological one. And I think this is the part almost nobody talks about. When you have less than a few $1,000s to your name, your brain treats money the way it treats physical danger. There's actual research on this. A study out of Columbia University found that financial scarcity consumes cognitive bandwidth, essentially acting like a mental tax that reduces your ability to think clearly and make good long-term decisions, in the same way sleep deprivation does. Scarcity isn't just uncomfortable, it makes you measurably worse at making good financial decisions, which, and this is the cruel irony, makes it harder to escape scarcity in the first place. It's a trap that reinforces itself. Think about the last time you made a genuinely bad financial decision. I'd bet good money it wasn't because you didn't understand basic math. It was because you were stressed, or scared, or exhausted, or trying to solve an emergency in the moment. Scarcity doesn't make you dumber, it makes you reactive. And reactive decisions are almost always expensive ones. This is why payday loans exist. This is why people making $35,000 a year sometimes end up with worse financial outcomes than people making $70,000 who are equally stressed just at a higher altitude. It's not about income, it's about the psychological weight of scarcity itself. Now here's where the switch flips. Somewhere around that $50,000 mark, and I want to be clear, this isn't some magic exact number, it's more of a threshold zone. Something changes in how your brain relates to money. You stop making decisions from fear and start making decisions from strategy. Here's a simple real-world example.
Someone with $2,000 to their name who gets a flat tire is in crisis mode. That $180 repair might mean they can't make rent, or they put it on a credit card at 24% interest, and now they're paying for that tire for the next year. Someone with $50,000, even if $45,000 of it is locked away in retirement accounts they can't easily touch, experiences that same flat tire completely differently. It's an annoyance, not an emergency. The nervous system response is different. The decision-making is different. There's no panic tax being paid. Now here's where it gets really interesting. That psychological shift then feeds back into better financial behavior. When you're not operating from scarcity, you negotiate better. You're not afraid to leave a bad job because you have a cushion, so you have leverage. Research on negotiation consistently shows that people with strong alternatives, or what's called a strong BATNA, best alternative to a negotiated agreement, negotiate meaningfully better outcomes, whether that's salary, a business deal, or literally the price of a used car. Money in the bank doesn't just sit there, it changes your posture in every financial interaction you have. All right, let's get practical, because I know some of you are thinking, this is great, Nick, but how do I actually get there? Before we talk about that, I need to address the 3 traps that keep people stuck below this threshold indefinitely. And look, I say this with love, but also with a little bit of frustration, because these traps are everywhere and they're marketed to you constantly. Trap number 1, lifestyle inflation disguised as you deserve it. Here's the thing. Every time you get a raise, there's a small window where you have a choice. Either that extra money goes towards your future, or it silently upgrades your current lifestyle in ways you barely notice. A $5,000 raise becomes a slightly nicer apartment, a slightly nicer car payment, a few more dinners out. Nothing dramatic, nothing that feels reckless in the moment, but a year later you're making more money and somehow you have the exact same amount saved. I'm not saying don't enjoy your money, I'm saying be intentional about it instead of letting it happen by accident. Trap number 2, the I'll start investing when I have more money myth. This one drives me a little crazy, not gonna lie. People wait until they have a meaningful amount to start investing, not realizing that the first few years of investing are less about the dollar amount and entirely about building the habit and getting the compound clock started. Someone who invests $100 a month starting at age 25 will, assuming an 8% average return, end up with more money by retirement than someone who invests $300 a month starting at age 35, despite contributing way less overall. Time in the market is doing work that no amount of catching up later can fully replace. Trap number 3, treating debt payoff and investing as an either-or when it's actually about interest rate math. A lot of people feel like they need to be 100% debt-free before they invest a single dollar. But here's the actual math. If you have debt at 5% interest and the market has historically returned around 8 to 10% annually on average, paying extra on that low-interest debt instead of investing is technically costing you money over the long run, even though it feels safer emotionally. Now, obviously, high-interest credit card debt at 22 to 25% is a different conversation entirely. That should absolutely be prioritized. But not all debt is created equal, and treating it like it is keeps people from building momentum for years longer than necessary.
Okay, let's get into it. Here's what actually works, based on both the math and the psychology we just covered. Step 1. Automate before you optimize. Here's what most people don't realize. Willpower is a terrible long-term financial strategy. It's not that you're weak, it's that willpower is a finite, exhaustible resource, and treating your savings rate as something you decide fresh every single paycheck is setting yourself up to lose eventually. Set up an automatic transfer the day your paycheck hits, even if it's just $50 to start. The goal isn't the amount right now. The goal is removing the decision entirely. Step 2. Attack the first $1,000 like it's an emergency, because it is. That first $1,000 breaks the payday loan cycle, the overdraft fee cycle, the credit card emergency cycle. It is disproportionately more valuable than the $1,000 that comes after it, because it's the difference between reactive money and strategic money. Sell stuff you don't use, pick up overtime, do a 60-day no-spend challenge on non-essentials. Treat this phase like a sprint, not a marathon, because it genuinely is the hardest and most important stretch. Step 3. Get to $50,000 primarily through consistency, not intensity. This is the part people get wrong. They think they need some dramatic side hustle or a massive salary jump to hit this number. In reality, someone contributing $600 a month into an index fund averaging 8% annually hits $50,000 in right around 5 years and 9 months. That's not a moonshot plan. That's a boring, unsexy, extremely repeatable plan. Step 4. Understand where that money should actually live. A rough, commonly recommended framework, and I'd encourage you to look into what fits your specific situation, is something like this. 3 to 6 months of expenses in a high-yield savings account for actual emergencies, contributions up to any employer 401k match because that's an immediate, guaranteed return on your money, and then additional investing in low-cost, diversified index funds for long-term growth. The point isn't the exact percentages. The point is that money needs a job, and just sitting and checking is not a job. Step 5. Track your progress in a way that fights the psychology of invisible growth. Remember what I said earlier. Compound growth is invisible for a long time, and that invisibility is what makes people quit. Check your net worth monthly, not daily. Daily checking shows you noise. Monthly checking shows you a trend. And trends are what keep you motivated when the day-to-day math feels like nothing is happening. I want to circle back to something because I think this is genuinely the most important part of this entire video. Once you cross that $50,000 threshold, you're not just further along the same path, you're on a fundamentally different path. The math changes because compounding is doing more of the work. The psychology changes because scarcity stops dictating your decisions. And here's the part that I think is the most surprising of all. Your relationship with risk changes too. Someone under $50,000 experiences a market downturn as terrifying because that money represents years of sacrifice they can vividly remember making. Someone with a larger cushion, who's been through a cycle or two, tends to experience that same downturn very differently because they understand it intellectually as a normal part of the process rather than a crisis. That doesn't mean it feels good, it never fully does, but the emotional intensity is different, and that emotional distance is what allows people to keep investing through downturns instead of panic selling at the worst possible time, which, by the way, is one of the single biggest destroyers of long-term returns that exists. Here's the thing I really want you to take away from this video. If you are currently sitting somewhere below that $50,000 mark, feeling like the progress is agonizingly slow, feeling like you're working so hard for such small incremental gains, I need you to understand that you are quite literally in the hardest part of the entire process. Not because you're doing something wrong, because this phase is mathematically and psychologically the most difficult phase there is. You are pushing the boulder up the hill. Nobody sees that part. Nobody applauds that part. There's no viral video of someone celebrating their $8,000 net worth. But that phase is where the entire foundation gets built. Every person you've ever seen with real financial freedom went through this exact same grinding, unglamorous, invisible stretch. There is no shortcut around it. There's only getting through it. So here's what I want you to do. Not someday, today. Open up your banking app. Look at your actual number, not to judge yourself, to establish your actual starting point. Then set up one automatic transfer, even if it's small, even if it feels almost pointless right now. Because I promise you, it is not pointless. It is the first push on a boulder that is eventually going to start rolling on its own. The distance between where you are right now and that $50,000 mark is going to feel like the longest, hardest stretch of your entire financial life. And in a very real sense, it is. But it's also the only stretch you have to do almost entirely on your own effort. Everything after it gets progressively easier, faster, and less dependent on you white-knuckling every single dollar. If this video actually helped you see your situation differently, do me a favor and hit that subscribe button, drop a like, and let me know in the comments where you're at on this journey right now. I read every single one, and honestly, seeing where you're starting from is what keeps me making these videos. I'll see you in the next one.